China has just done the unthinkable. It has accepted a bold, unprecedented diplomatic offer from Taiwan. Around the world, governments, analysts, and citizens alike are holding their breath. Is this a fragile glimpse of a peaceful future in East Asia, or the quiet beginning of a profound shift in the global power structure? The implications are staggering. This moment could mark the end of one of the most dangerous geopolitical standoffs of our time, or the start of a new era filled with unpredictable consequences. For decades, the relationship between China and Taiwan has simmered at the edge of conflict. At the core of the tension is a clash of identity, sovereignty, and ideology that has persisted since the end of the Chinese Civil War in 1949. The Chinese Communist Party, ruling the mainland under the People's Republic of China, has never wavered in its belief that Taiwan is a breakaway province, a territory that must, sooner or later, return to Beijing's control. That belief, codified in the One China policy, has been aggressively pushed on the global stage. Nations around the world have been pressured to acknowledge only one China. And in Beijing's eyes, that means Taiwan cannot, and must not, exist as a separate country. But Taiwan tells a different story. Emerging from decades of authoritarian rule into a vibrant, pluralistic democracy, Taiwan has forged its own path. It has its own government, its own military, and its own constitution. Its people vote in free and fair elections, enjoy freedom of speech and press, and increasingly identify not as Chinese, but as Taiwanese. Despite losing its seat at the United Nations in 1971, Taiwan has become an economic juggernaut. Its technology sector, particularly its dominance in semiconductor manufacturing, has made the island indispensable to the modern world. Yet none of this has changed Beijing's core stance. China's leadership has long maintained that reunification is a matter of when, not if, and has refused to rule out military force to achieve that end. The Taiwan Strait remains one of the world's most heavily militarized flashpoints. Over the years, warplanes, warships, and inflammatory rhetoric have become commonplace. At times, it has seemed like conflict was not just possible, but inevitable. Against this backdrop of volatility and distrust, Taiwan's recent move has stunned even the most seasoned observers. In the face of growing regional instability, economic headwinds, and the persistent threat of Chinese aggression, Taiwan's leaders took a step few believed possible. They extended a diplomatic olive branch, but not just any olive branch. An audacious proposal that dares to... Though many details remain confidential, the outlines of the offer have begun to emerge. The proposal is built on three interlocking pillars: economic integration, military transparency, and political dialogue. The first pillar focuses on trade and investment. Taiwan proposed a sweeping new economic framework with China, one that would eliminate tariffs, facilitate cross-strait commerce, and deepen bilateral cooperation in a wide range of industries. This wasn't merely an invitation to do business. It was a strategic vision designed to create mutual economic dependency. Taiwan promised access to its coveted semiconductor expertise, technology that is foundational to everything from smartphones to advanced military systems. In return, Taiwan would receive access to China's vast consumer base, as well as investment in its infrastructure and research sectors. But critically, the proposal includes mechanisms to ensure Taiwan's economic sovereignty remains intact. Provisions to guard against intellectual property theft, unfair market practices, and political coercion. The second pillar addresses the ever-present threat of war. In an unprecedented move, Taiwan proposed the creation of direct military communication channels with China. The goal: to reduce the risk of accidental escalation. Misunderstandings in the Taiwan Strait have come dangerously close to igniting real conflict before, and Taiwan's leadership knows that in today's environment, even a minor miscalculation could spiral into catastrophe. The proposed framework includes joint protocols for military exercises, real-time communication during potential flashpoints, and mechanisms for de-escalation. For two militaries that have operated under decades of suspicion and hostility, the offer was a radical departure from business as usual. But it's the third pillar, political dialogue, that may be the most astonishing of all. For decades, Taiwan has refused to entertain any negotiation that might lead toward reunification, while China has refused to consider any scenario that leaves Taiwan independent. But in this proposal, Taiwan offered something new: a structured, long-term conversation. Not a surrender, not a declaration of unity, but an opening. Taiwan made it clear that any discussions would have to acknowledge the political reality on the ground, that Taiwan is a functioning democracy, and any future relationship with Beijing must respect the will of its people. The offer outlined topics for mutual dialogue, such as joint cultural initiatives, economic policy coordination, even limited security cooperation. Importantly, it emphasized that no political outcome could be preordained. and that reunification, if ever discussed, would have to occur peacefully and democratically. The world's response was immediate. Shock, caution, curiosity, and above all, silence, as everyone waited for Beijing's reaction. And then, to the astonishment of many, China responded. Not with condemnation, not with threats, but with guarded interest. Beijing confirmed it would consider the proposal. For a government that has made Taiwan's future a non-negotiable red line, this was a seismic shift. It was not a full acceptance, nor was it a promise. But the simple fact that China didn't reject the offer outright sent a signal that something fundamental may be changing. So why the sudden pivot from Beijing? The answer lies in a combination of pressures: external, internal, and economic. China's economy, once the envy of the developing world, is facing headwinds. Slower growth, supply chain challenges, and mounting tensions with Western nations have weakened some of the pillars of its success. Beijing needs access to cutting-edge semiconductor technology to remain competitive in the age of artificial intelligence, advanced computing, and digital infrastructure. Taiwan holds the keys to that future. At the same time, China faces diplomatic isolation, especially as its assertiveness in the South China Sea and its domestic crackdowns have drawn criticism from allies and rivals alike. Accepting dialogue with Taiwan, on favorable terms, could be a masterstroke that allows China to reframe its image globally, without appearing to compromise at home. Domestically, there may also be a growing awareness within China's leadership that the old tactics, pressure, threats, and propaganda are no longer sufficient to win hearts and minds in Taiwan. Military intimidation has only hardened Taiwan's resolve. Perhaps now Beijing is recalibrating, not abandoning its goals, but exploring a more subtle, long-game approach. The path ahead is still uncertain. There are powerful factions on both sides, military, political, ideological, that may resist this move. The offer could collapse under its own weight. Talks could break down. Trust could falter. But for the first time in a generation, there is a sliver of possibility where once there was only. This is more than a diplomatic overture. It's a test of vision, courage, and restraint. It challenges decades of doctrine, shatters long-standing assumptions, and forces the world to reconsider what might be possible between two societies, long assumed to be locked in perpetual opposition. If Taiwan and China can move forward, carefully, deliberately, and with mutual respect, this moment could become one of the defining turning points of the 21st century. But if it fails, the consequences may be just as historic. For now, all eyes remain fixed on the strait. Hope, doubt, and tension hang in the air. The future is unwritten, but it has never felt closer. China finds itself increasingly encircled, pressed by the United States, scrutinized by Europe, and watched closely by its regional neighbors. In this climate of suspicion and strategic tension, Taiwan's sudden diplomatic offer lands like a lightning bolt, setting off a storm of speculation. Could this be a path toward lasting peace, or is it the opening move in a far deeper, more calculated game? Beijing's decision to engage with the proposal signals something more than simple diplomacy. It hints at a broader attempt to recast its role on the global stage. By adopting a more conciliatory posture, China may be seeking to reframe itself as a responsible power rather than a looming threat, hoping to open doors that have long remained shut across Asia and the West. But behind this outward pivot lies a more turbulent domestic reality. China's leadership faces mounting pressures at home, an economy losing momentum, a labor force in decline, and growing public unrest. A diplomatic engagement with Taiwan offers a temporary distraction, a narrative of peace and unity that could restore confidence in the ruling regime. If this move is successful, it allows China to portray itself not as a harbinger of war, but as a statesman of stability, calming tensions within while reshaping perception abroad. And yet the world watches with deep skepticism. The Taiwan Strait, long a flashpoint for global conflict, has suddenly become the focal point of a potential realignment in international affairs. Could this really be the start of a historic shift, or is it a strategic feint, one designed to sow division, weaken alliances, and tighten China's grip without a single shot fired? As Washington doubles down on Indo-Pacific alliances and ramps up countermeasures against Chinese influence, Beijing's motives come into question. Is this outreach toward Taiwan a sincere act of diplomacy, or a masterstroke of geopolitical maneuvering? By casting itself as a peace-seeking power, China might aim to fracture the unity of the U.S.-led coalition, dampening Western resolve while isolating Taiwan diplomatically. If successful, it could dull global support for Taiwan's independence, undermining years of advocacy and strategic partnerships in a single sweeping gesture. But beneath the surface of diplomacy lies something far more pressing: survival. China's internal machinery is under strain. The world's second-largest economy is faltering. Key industries are stagnating, An aging population looms like a shadow over the nation's future. And the public, restless and wary, is beginning to question the promises of prosperity and progress. In this light, China's shift toward diplomacy might not be a sign of newfound goodwill, but a desperate recalibration. Reaching out to Taiwan could offer the government a political reprieve, a way to deflect from economic anxiety and reinforce the image of strong, steady leadership. But such a maneuver buys time, not solutions. It may cool tensions temporarily, but the underlying goals remain. Reunification on Beijing's terms has never left the agenda. And what may appear today as peace could, in time, reveal itself as the opening move in a long and quiet campaign. On the global front, China's desire to be seen as a mature, multilateral actor is nothing new. For years, Beijing has pushed the rhetoric of peaceful rise and mutual respect. Yet skeptics argue that this rhetoric often masks deeper intentions. Accepting Taiwan's offer could be framed as a watershed moment, a powerful symbol of diplomacy. But it could just as easily be a strategic move to disarm critics while tightening control behind the scenes. In the halls of power from Washington to Brussels, questions swirl. Is this a turning point, or just another phase in China's long-term play for dominance? Reactions have been swift and varied. For the United States, the calculus is complicated. If Taiwan emerges from this agreement with its de facto independence intact, sovereign in all but name and economically fortified, Washington might cautiously support the outcome, seeing it as a way to avert immediate conflict. But if the deal tilts in Beijing's favor, if Taiwan is seen as conceding ground or compromising its democratic foundations, expect the response to be far more aggressive. Increased military deployments, strengthened regional partnerships, and an escalation of deterrence could quickly follow. In Tokyo and Seoul, there is little room for complacency. Japan and South Korea, economically entangled with Taiwan's semiconductor sector and strategically aligned with the U.S., will likely demand full transparency. Any sign that Beijing is tightening its grip over the island will trigger defensive realignments, boosted military budgets, closer ties with Washington, and a clear stand against Chinese expansionism. The European Union, ever walking the line between economic pragmatism and democratic ideals, will move more cautiously. With massive trade ties at stake, Brussels may hesitate to act decisively. But the EU's influence in shaping global opinion cannot be ignored. If China's move disrupts supply chains or threatens long-term stability, Europe may find itself forced into a more assertive position, helping define the contours of the post-agreement order. Then there's Russia, a strategic ally and ideological partner to Beijing. Moscow is almost certain to frame this development as a win for stability and a blow to U.S. dominance. For the Kremlin, this is another chance to accelerate the global shift toward multipolarity, where Western influence wanes and rival powers chart their own course. And so, what now? Several scenarios loom, each heavy with consequence. In the most optimistic outcome, a new status quo might emerge. One where Taiwan maintains its democratic system and autonomy while deepening economic ties with the mainland. This fragile balance would require mutual restraint, trust, and unprecedented clarity, conditions rarely seen in cross-strait relations. More likely as a subtler game. China may be laying the groundwork for a long campaign of incremental influence, gradually eroding Taiwan's sovereignty without direct confrontation. The agreement could be a Trojan horse, an offer wrapped in diplomacy but loaded with quiet intent. Such a path would almost certainly spark internal backlash in Taiwan. If the public feels its identity and freedoms are being chipped away, protests could erupt, shaking the political landscape. And if the world underestimates China's ambitions, a misstep could escalate into a confrontation that spirals beyond control. What if Taiwan's people resist? What if Beijing overreaches? What if Western powers react too slowly, or too aggressively? In this delicate moment, the potential for unintended consequences is immense. The Taiwan-China relationship stands on the edge of a knife, and the next moves could either usher in a rare era of peace or unleash a new and dangerous phase of rivalry. We are witnessing a turning point, uncertain, volatile, and historic. Is this a true step toward reconciliation or the calm before an inevitable storm? The future remains unwritten, but one thing is clear. The decisions made now will echo for decades. The world is watching closely. What do you think? Is this a new chapter in diplomacy or a deeper power play in disguise? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to stay informed as this critical story continues to unfold.